And thanks everybody out there who's listening, and thanks to Bill and Paul. I think we've gotten a good cross section of a couple of different uses of the data sharing between the different dispatch centers. So I've been fortunate on my side to be here for 18 years at MNDOT. And to kind of see, well, I guess 19 years to watching traffic, and then 16 years here at MNDOT, to be able to see the evolution here between a relationship with maintenance and patrol. So what I'll talk about, it's maybe not the catchiest name, but it's basically what we're going for, which is simultaneous incident response. So at the same time that the troopers are going, the traffic management center is notified and using their tools, and then if necessary, maintenance is going. So it's trying to get all those primary state transportation agencies queued up and responding as closely together as possible. Somebody else has got a better name for it. Let me know. That was the most direct one I could come up with. So a little background: Minnesota, 5.6 million people in the whole state. Geographically, it's a big state, but the population is centered basically within that red circle in the metro area. So that's about over half the state's population is in the metro. If you doubled the size of that circle, it would be about 2/3 of the state's population. So historically, we've concentrated on the metro area and the Monday through Friday commuters. That's historically what, on a traffic management side, what we have centered on. We're making our way into taking on more of a statewide role, and that has more to do, if anything, with more ITS resources being developed and being put out in greater Minnesota, and the need to and the expectations to manage those. A little background on the area, and just to give, since I'm assuming most of the folks out there have not been to our fair metropolis, but there's Minneapolis, there's downtown St. Paul, the airport, Mall of America for shopping fans. There's the University of Minnesota, Gophers, the Lynx, the Twins, the Vikings, and Timberwolves in order of franchise success for sports, Wild, Saints, and a new soccer stadium opening up in a couple of months for the Loons. So you can see this is all fairly centered within a relatively small area, 30, 40 or so mile radius out from the downtowns. And then there's us. There's the Regional Transportation Management Center in Roseville. So RTMC, Joint Dispatch Facility for Minnesota State Patrol Dispatch, which is part of DPS, which is Department of Public Safety, which is a different agency than DOT. We're separate entities. And then we have our Metro Maintenance Dispatch, so maintenance dispatch 24/7 just for the metro area. And then freeway ops, basically traffic management. And again, historically, that's been for the metro area. The building itself, 53,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet of that is for the dispatch floor, and we've been in the building now for 15 years, coming up on 16. So that's what 10,000 square feet looks like, a big open room. In the far end of the room is State Patrol Dispatch. In the middle of the room is Maintenance Dispatch, and then closest to the camera is Traffic Management. So one big open room, no walls, no barriers, and that was what the intent was when this was all put together. There would be an open floor plan. State Patrol Dispatch, close up to them. There's Maintenance Dispatch, and then our folks there in Traffic Management. For the other DOT, the other TMC folks out there, there's the snapshot of the operation. So 800 cameras. I mean, pretty much the entire metro area is instrumented with cameras, and at least the metro freeway system is instrumented. There's maybe a 4 or 5 mile area on 610 in the North Metro that is not instrumented, but the rest of the system is. Big system. Very heavy on ramp metering and detection, our own detection. The software that we use to run all of this is developed in-house. It's our own in-house developed software, and it is available, though, under open source GPL, if anybody's interested. It is open source. For staffing, 8 full-time people on the TMC side, so about 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 1 person on the weekends. First is our service patrol. So 20 employees, 2 shifts, depending on sick and vacation, 8 to 10 drivers in the morning, 8 to 10 drivers in the afternoon. two trucks on the weekends. It's not 24/7, and they also share trucks. They do not they don't take home trucks. They don't respond by pager. They are out when they're out and respond to calls. State Patrol is about 550 troopers in the state, and 160 of those are assigned to Metro. So that gives a ratio of one trooper for every 22,500 people. So there are not a lot of troopers. So you can kind of see where that works towards everybody, really the need for everybody to work together, because it's a big metro area and there really aren't that many, I mean, the staffing on the first side and the patrol side is pretty small. Everybody who works in here is a state employee. There's no contracted workers. So you get the benefit from a state employee. You get decent pay. You get decent benefits. You also get folks that are here as a career centered. So that's good. And then the other part of it, usually the issue with using state employees that people get brought up is the dispatch centers become a dumping ground, or you get to be you're the victim of seniority and things like that. So each of the different jobs that are in here have their own job class. So that gives you the benefit of being able to being able to hire the people that you want to hire under the qualifications that you want. And the TMC operators are actually even in a different union. It's a technical union that's a spinoff from everybody else is in AFSCME, but the TMC operators are in a different job class, or in a different union. So our goal on the TMC side, awareness of every incident that's happening on the freeway system, and basically it's find it, pin it down on camera, 20 seconds. It's not a guideline. It's not written up on the walls. But it's realistically, that's pretty much what it ends up being. Sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's slower, but say on an average it's about 20 seconds to get that incident on camera. Is it where we think it is? Make some determinations. Are we sending the service patrol? Are we putting up overhead message boards? We work constantly with State Patrol to get the locations clarified. In a lot of cases, just keeping an eye on it, see what happens if it's going to get worse. But basically, is it something we can do something to help get cleared a little quicker or be a little safer, at least warn the public about. So for the fans of the FHWA's TIM program and coming out of the TIM program documentation, it's basically taking that chart with the T1 reporting time and putting traffic management as close to that T1 as possible. So again, that 10 seconds or so, 10, 15 seconds after the reporting to put traffic management there, which then use the cameras for verification, and then verification you get on camera, you can do size up to some extent, and then good size up leads to good vehicle positioning. Because, I mean, from a scene safety perspective, you want to park behind the incident, so you need to know where it is. So you can can I get it from this ramp, or do I have to go to the next interchange and flip back to come back to it, with the overall goal of reducing that the lanes clearance time and the incident clearance time, and dropping some time off of that. So sources, we monitor Patrol's dispatch radio. We are on State Patrol's CAD system. We're partners on the CAD. We can enter events. We can create events. We use Patrol's events for entering in our information. We also eavesdrop on what cameras State Patrol is looking at, and sometimes that gives us a heads up a little quicker if they're looking at something and they haven't dispatched it out or put it in CAD yet. Sometimes there's less of this now, but there used to be more. You'd overhear them on the phone with a caller trying to figure out where they were. This has gotten a lot better with the Phase 2 911. You don't have this happen as much as it used to. Still have some off-the-shelf scanners so that we can pick up for the locals. So there's a breakdown on the sources. In 2015, 70% of our incident notification came from CAD, from State Patrol CAD, 20% from the Service Patrol on patrol, and then 10% either found on camera or from the locals. And I checked the 16 and 17 data, and it was roughly within that same kind of slice. There's pictures of the first trucks. That's what the Service Patrol looks like. That was the newer new truck style. There's a little bit older of a truck style, and you can see one of the drivers in there entering information on the Tough Book on the same software that State Patrol uses. So, like I mentioned, with the sharing part of this, so everybody on the floor has access to the cameras. Anybody can punch in a camera number, punch in a camera, wing it around. Like I said, we're on the same CAD system, and without going into a lot of detail for that, I mean, certainly that's a big one that's come up. That's extremely helpful for us. But we use State Patrol's CAD as our primary records management and as a notification source. Radios is a statewide radio system. We and the Service Patrol monitor the patrol mains. Some of the troopers monitor the first main because they know that we're going to redispatch the call to the Service Patrol, and we might give some additional information, and also to help coordinate the response with first. And then the first trucks have the ability to impound vehicles, so they use the patrol main to order the impound. Ring downs between the groups, kind of not too similar, I think, to what Bill had mentioned, but basically there's a tie down created between the two different phone systems. It's a little bit quicker than a quick dial. It's basically a one-touch button, and it rings on the other side between TMC maintenance and patrol. After hours, because we're not 24/7, putting up the overhead message boards for Greater Minnesota, and then also for the metro area falls on patrol, and maintenance dispatch to some extent, especially if it's construction related. But the incident signage, a lot of that goes to State Patrol dispatch after hours. So some of the key dates in '96, so 20 plus years ago, is when they started looking at and building this concept, the RTMC. The TOCC agreement 20 years ago, this basically laid out some sharing between DOT and DPS, and that basically DPS would act as an after-hours point of contact for DOT. So if somebody had to, if there's an emergency at 3 o'clock in the morning and maintenance was needed, MNDOT was needed after hours, the State Patrol would be that call taker, and then would call the appropriate DOT person after hours. In exchange for that, DOT provided some hardware, some furniture, some computer upgrades, things like that. 98 to 2002 is when we first started putting the aero boards on the first trucks. Significance of that is that really marked the change from first as being motorist assist, free gas, free tire change, to actually becoming an incident responder and actually making sense for them to be at an incident because their lights were better. And then that really started to change this relationship from TMC as being kind of a more passive information gathering and ramp meters and things like that, into being a much more active participant in the response part of it. Moving to RTMC 2003, the regional radio in 04, CAD integration now for 10 years. And Patrol did a consolidation now 6 years ago where they went from 10 different regional dispatch centers down to 2. So there's now Metro here at there's RTMC, which is basically Metro and everything north, and then there's a much smaller center in southern Minnesota that's running the southern part of the state. And then an update to that service agreement was just signed this year, and then us expanding to do more statewide and kind of be a little bit more solid on the weekends. So day-to-day benefits, I mean, for sure. I mean, we see this every day when we're out there. I mean, you find something on camera, and I mean, at the very least, you're getting the signs up. It's not 5 minutes, it's not 10 minutes, it's not 15 minutes, it's 10 seconds after the 911 call that there's a stalled vehicle blocking the middle lane and the signs are going up. The verified location, yeah, it's under that bridge, it's not before the bridge. No, you can't get it from that ramp, you have to go to the next ramp, come back around. That means quicker response. Things drive off. Stalls restart themselves. Crashes, get out, they talk, they both drive away. Motorcycles go down. Get 1 million 911 calls about the motorcycle down. You bring it up on camera, the guy gets up, dusts himself off, and rides off. Crashes. Our first will go out and clear crashes, if not to the shoulder, but if we can, even off to a gas station, somewhere off the highway, clearing debris. And that kind of collaboration, so then the trooper can slow down. They're not running code through rush hour traffic. Stuff like an overheat when it is below zero looks very impressive. It generates a lot of calls. You can usually tell on camera to some extent whether it's an overheat or a fire. just goofy stuff like getting, when it is a car fire, getting the salt truck started at the same time the fire department is being started so that everybody is there and can do their job and nobody's having to wait for the next guy to come. So that salt's ready to go at basically when everything else is clearing, they can hit the salt. So the thing that's going to sure perk up everybody, all the DOT folks at least ears and all the management people, what's the cost benefit ratio of this? $1 billion. No, we don't know. This was one of the trade-offs that we had to make, is that we used to have data analysts, and then as those data analysts retired or moved somewhere else, we repurposed those job positions to be dispatchers. That gave us the real-time benefits of the incident management in real time. Then we really lost the people who would do the data analysis, create the tools, stuff like that. We have a ton of data. It's all there. It needs to be looked at and some numbers associated with it. One of the things that we looked at was secondary crashes and using the CAD data. We do record our cameras, so one of the things that we did was comparing CAD data with the previous day's crashes with video and then trying to see how many of those were secondaries, and that's what we came up with 4%. Just one of the other things they figure about, just one of the weird things we've seen is the big crashes, and we had one of these last Friday. Big crash, whole freeway shutdowns, semis and cars and the whole works going on. The whole thing clears out of there in 30 minutes, which was pretty impressive, and that's basically because folks are looking at it on camera, they know that it's there, they know where it's at, tows are getting started, fire's getting started, ambulance is getting started, everybody's coming out there and doing what they're supposed to do, and the whole thing gets cleared out. So it's kind of funny when you get some of the other crashes that go on for an hour and a half with the minor crashes. And then major incidents, so you build a good relationship for day-to-day stuff, and then that makes it a lot easier. If you've got good relationships day-to-day, minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, it makes it a lot easier to scale up for the medium-sized events, and then when the big stuff happens, you've got a good track to follow, and it makes it a lot easier. Certainly the bridge collapse in 2007. At the very least, everybody in that room knew exactly what this was. Everybody in that room knew what the scope of it was and what this all meant in that first 10 seconds or so when the camera moved and were able to start calling their appropriate resources. RNC in 2008 was a huge deal, and there was some very good relationships set up. There's some good working set up internally within the group, and it also exposed what we needed to do. There are also problems and those that showed up during the RNC. A lot of that in our own response coordination between our own maintenance folks, between us, TMC, Service Patrol, and our own maintenance. Gas line explosion, 2011, and then really most recently the Black Lives Matters protest in the 16 and 17 years, and a number of freeway closures, and the relationships with that, and then trying to improve on the whole process, and that really, those things really, I think, connected a lot of folks here and kind of it really built on the relationships and really put together some good practices. And then all of that then culminating with the Super Bowl this year and taking a lot of the lessons learned and trying to fix a lot of the things that didn't work right, like at the RNC, and trying to incorporate that into the Super Bowl response. And one of the little side notes with the Super Bowl that I didn't think when I was putting the slide together, and I didn't think about it until a couple of days later. But one of the funny things is that when the Super Bowl was going on game day, and I was here at RTMC, it was me, it was the lieutenant from patrol, it was all of the dispatch folks, there was my comparative supervisor for maintenance dispatch, and the ops center manager for patrol's PSAP. We're all here. So, but the governor, the commissioner, the lieutenant commissioner, the lieutenant governor, head of maintenance, none of those folks were here. They were all at home, hopefully in their jammy jams, eating nachos, watching the game. And they all resting assured that if something really crazy happened, we'd give them a call. But we were able to handle this incident, and a lot of the planning and the meetings and all this came together with the same folks who had been working together for the last few years. And even with different people coming in, it was still adapting the the procedures that had came up were just the working relationship. Not a lot of this is formally written down. It's just the expected way of doing things that this has evolved into. And I thought that was really cool. Years of hard work. The first few years when we all moved into this room, it was not pleasant. It took years of people being able to work together, and it took some retirements, and it took some other things in order to get rid of some of the baggage and be able to get where we are. This took a long time, both individually and then on the management center, both with the individuals on the floor working, but this between first and patrol, first and maintenance. This whole change and evolution relationship took a long time, and it was a lot of work. Maintaining it, like any good marriage, it's a lot of work, and you don't take anything for granted. And something could change that could really screw stuff up. So you really try to keep going with a good attitude and be patient. Knowing that TMCs and service patrols are often the first ones to get privatized if there's a budget or if there's a political side to it. We've been lucky. We've been very lucky here with some of the governmental choices to be supported. Other challenges, this is always, it's a big deal to us, and this is the same on the TIM stuff. It's a big deal to us, but trying to get the other PSAPs, the other responders, getting the information out to them. We have this whole elaborate system that pins everything down and what exactly is needed, but trying to make others, trying to get the other folks to be part of that too and understand the importance of it. Getting the traffic video, so we share traffic video with the PSAPs, working on a process now to try to upgrade our video sharing, so it's not just stills to the public, it's actual streaming video. And hopefully that's kind of a back end to get more on the response side involved in this as well. A lot of the local, there's still a number of independent PSAPs in the metro area. And the counties all have their own, and then Hennepin County, there's probably a good 8 or 9 independent PSAPs. And a lot of these freeway calls go to these local PSAPs first. And how they triage the calls, how they pass the data on, how timely they pass the data on, those are big challenges. Because again, we have this whole elaborate system that's built on knowing about things as quickly as possible. But if that 911 call gets intercepted by somebody else, then it kind of slows down the process. Starting to see, there was a move recently for a few of the local police departments to start encrypting their mains, which basically makes those scanners useless. Also for the troopers who have those channels in their radios, it makes that useless too. So that, unfortunately, that move is something that we're going to have to see how that plays out, because that goes against the information sharing. People putting calls into Waze instead of calling 911. I guess Waze is better than nothing, but there's still where that goes with the crowdsource and where people's comfort level, especially as people's expectations start to change, and where they feel comfortable delivering information as members of the public too. And then our move to the statewide and how we evolve into that. And of course, connected vehicles, the big one. What is this all going to look like in 5 years? What's it all going to look like in 10 years, 20 years? A lot of changes, and see where that all goes. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, everybody who's out there. If you got questions, remember, put them in the pod, and then I will turn it back to